unleashindependence.com.
All right, thank you for tuning in to another broadcast of Unleash Independence Radio. We have a very special show. We have a great guest today, Jeffrey Tucker. Jeffrey, thank you for coming on. I just want to talk to you real quick. If you wouldn't mind doing your introduction.
Oh, sure. I'm very happy. So, my name is Jeffrey Tucker, and I'm the author of about 4 books. Most famously, Bourbon for Breakfast, but more recently, A Beautiful Anarchy. And I am the proprietor or founder of the Laissez-Faire Club, which is kind of an online book service for distribution of ideas, and lots of other things. But interested in technology and interested in changing the world. So,
very good.
Like all of
the Laissez-Faire Club, the website is lfc.org. So anyone that is interested in reading what is there and that information, go there. Let's bring on Erica Davies. Erica, thanks for coming on and talking with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then, as always, Brock J., co-founder of Unleash Independence. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and I'm excited to pick Jeffrey's brain about kind of the whole Rand Paul thing, IP, Bitcoin, and some other topics.
Absolutely. One thing I wanted, so let's just get into a post you made on you posted on Facebook, Jeffrey, talking about Rand Paul, and just a little snippet from your post says that you have no interest in propping up saints or something of a witch hunt. So if I can just have you carry on from there, what are your thoughts on what is going on with the grand heresies of Rand Paul?
Yeah. Well, I think I said something like, if you're planning to send me, all the people who are sending me evidence of Rand Paul's, heresies can save your bandwidth. I'm not interested in saint making or witch burning. I'm only interested in the promotion of human liberty, and however that happens, and whoever does it, I'm for it. And if it happens incrementally, I'm for that. If it happens all at once, I'm for that. I don't think anybody has a perfect view of what the precise strategy we should be using is. Rand has his ideas on what strategy he wants to use, and he seems to be making some progress. I do find it's puzzling, isn't it, that there are 2 kinds of critics of Rand. One are the supporters of big government, whether overseas or at home, and the other are kind of libertarians who are disappointed he's not going far enough, fast enough. And my point was really that if you're involved in an ideological movement or a movement committed to principle, we need to kind of back away from the tendency to get involved in hero worship, as if we're looking for the white knight to save us. It's very possible that liberty is going to come our way not because somebody brings it to us, but because people like us take advantage of opportunities that we've been given. And the best thing that Rand might be able to do, at least I think from his point of view, is on the margin increase the amount of opportunities that are available to us to build our own liberties. At least that's my interpretation of the way he's proceeding with his political career. The other thing to remember about Rand is that he's not really interested in being some kind of iconic national figure. He's really interested in being a kind of a good statesman who pushes out liberty at the margin, and being an effective kind of senator. Now, I don't have any particular prediction about whether or not his choice of strategic outlook is going to be end up being meritorious or not. But I do think that he's entitled to, to a fair chance at seeing, giving it a go. I mean, the fact is that from the point of view of human liberty, he's probably overall the best senator we have had in something like 100 years. And I think he deserves some credit for that. That's really my only point.
Absolutely. Well, and when you reflect on hero worship and everything, a lot of what we talk about and stuff that we gravitate towards here on Unleash Independence is getting to principles, getting to ideas rather than individuals. But Brock, I want to throw it to you. Comments on that?
I like that a lot, Jeffrey. I think that's the biggest thing is people are always trying to find that one person, and I think when people start to realize that they're the person, like not they're the person of the movement, but they're the person that's going to make the change. And we can agree, even if you disagree with some of the things Rand Paul does, ignore those. Find the people that do on that particular issue, and then go back and agree. And if you agree with Rand on some, then help him push those ideas if you agree with them. But just promote what you love.
Yeah, no, I think that is exactly right. There's no, I think we need to get beyond this insistence that every living person, be 100%, correct on every single subject, and when we discover their secret heresy, we throw them into the lake and see if they sink or not, or whatever the plan is, or we find the one person who we believe is 100% correct on all issues and follow him or her to the ends of the earth. I mean, this is just a kind of a stupid way to go about politics, it seems to me. We've got to be focused on principles above everything else, and that means detaching ourselves a little bit from personalities. It was really interesting to me. I am a huge fan of Ron Paul, Rand's father, Ron, and I've always admired him. And I listened very carefully to his speeches during the election, 2012 primaries, and he was always about trying to draw attention to the ideas. In every speech he would say, it's not about me, it's not about me. It's about the ideas, about the idea of freedom. But he had a hard time getting that message across, actually, because there's some tendency within the American democratic culture, that wants to always attach, principles to personalities and, as I say, follow those people as far as they can possibly go. I don't think that that's ever what Ron intended. Sometimes I look at the whole campaign and think of the movie Life of Brian, where Brian keeps running away saying, "Look, I'm not the Messiah," I was like, Ron was sort of in that position of saying, "Look, I'm not the Messiah."
Absolutely. Erica, what are your comments on that?
Well, we've been talking a lot at Duquesne lately about the psychology of liberty, and I think that the dangers of hero worship, such as you're talking about, can easily lead to the idea of an inherent hierarchy of individuals, which could or could not be bad, but that often leads then into the idea of imposed government should naturally follow, because some people are naturally better than others. And I think that's a dangerous road to go down.
It is, and there's also a problem, particularly as regards politics, because essentially what we're doing is sort of waiting for some, charismatic politician to arrive to cause the government to somehow give us more liberty. And then we feel that somehow trapped until that day arrives. Like we have nothing else we can do with our lives other than just wait for freedom to be brought to us, like a takeout meal or something, like a pizza delivered, and that's just not going to happen, and we need to let go of that illusion. I feel like many people in the who had such high hopes last year are kind of strangely demoralized and feeling like they just want to kind of give up, like there's no hope. And I don't think that is really justified. I think there's just as much hope now, in fact, more hope now than there was 5 or 10 years ago. But it has nothing to do really with whether we're winning elections or getting our guys into public office or things like that. I think it all has to do with, attitudes and the cultural development and the development of commerce that, helps to build networks and put together a sort of an alternative social and cultural infrastructure to that which the state is providing. And that's essentially how revolutions, dramatic social changes take place, is that a kind of a crumbling establishment is no longer effective at managing, of progressing commercial and social life, and there occurs a gigantic displacement, so that the institutions you develop in your own life and in your own social network come to kind of replace those crumbling institutions of the state. That's how revolutions normally occur, but it requires that sort of stage of building, so you putting together your businesses, putting together your educational institutions, putting together your private networks and social clubs, and that's what's happening right now. And that makes me very encouraged. So I don't see that there's any reason for demoralization right now just because somehow our guy, didn't become, the grand poobah of the United States or something like that. In fact, I'm sort of glad that didn't happen, actually. I think that would have been probably a calamity. I mean, liberty is going to be built from below, not brought to us from the top down.
So, Jeffrey, you're just kind of promoting more of the enjoy the process of liberty, living liberty, not just looking for an end result.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I'd love to dream about the end result. I'm, in fact, a dedicated proponent of the idea that we don't need a state at all. In fact, I find the whole institution just mostly parasitical and certainly superfluous, and I'd like it to go away. But the only way we're going to make that happen is to take that in progressive steps through the things we do in our own lives, putting together really robust social networks and families and institutions and starting businesses and technology especially. I'm most impressed at how technology is assisting us in this regard. So in any case, in other words, I mean, to me, to judge Rand Paul, is he our savior? I don't think he wants to be our savior. And I don't think he should be judged on whether or not he is our savior. Do you see what I mean? So it's a little unfair. I think he does really, really cool stuff. I mean, he's pushing ideas that just 10 years ago weren't even part of the Republican Party at all. I think he's very realistic about what he can and can't do. And I think he's pretty dedicated himself to being an effective politician, not just standing on the outside throwing stones at the windows, but really getting in there and bringing people around to his point of view. And he chooses the issues that he's going to talk about very carefully. He's very smart. This is going to take us too far afield, but I think that children always learn things by observing their parents, and they take things that they find valuable, and they try to improve on the things that they've observed. I've done an extensive study of the great composer J.S. Bach and the way his sons conducted their own musical careers, and it's really clear to me that the sons of Bach's sons really set out to kind of do things in their own lives that they felt like enabled them to avoid some of the miseries that their own father felt. So, I mean, sons are always kind of playing off that complicated dynamic. And I just think that Rand should be allowed, really, to make his own choices and go his own path and pursue his own strategic vision according to the lessons he feels like he's learned by being enmeshed in this political world that he kind of grew up in. And I think we owe him a little bit of respect and deference, and just deference to his plans and his point of view. And I mean, it seems to me in the balance, he's done extraordinary good. I mean, that day that he had that filibuster that was one of the most exciting days that I can ever remember in politics. I mostly don't pay any attention to politics. That day I paid attention. It was really a kick.
Yeah, that day a lot of people paid attention who don't normally.
Yeah, that's right. That's
so true. It's things like that will wake up a lot of people and just make them question the idea of things if they're not involved in looking at economics or just liberty in general. So it's really good. It's taken a little bit of a turn a little bit because we have so many different topics we want to ask you about. But we've got a question from Ben. He sent in and says, I know you're not a fan of intellectual property laws. Does that skepticism extend to patent rights? And if so, what is the non-government solution to protect the incentive to innovate?
Okay, so the patent solution is more complicated than the copyright one. Copyright is, well, I should to back up and say that intellectual property is not something that exists in nature like normal property rights. Like in normal property rights, you have the thing, and you don't want somebody to take it from you, so you just kind of guard it carefully, and that's it. And that can happen without any kind of meeting of the legislature or passing of any laws. Property rights are sort of built into the structure of the social order. Intellectual property rights are very much a modern invention. They kind of stole the name property as a way of kind of conferring upon private companies a grant of monopoly privilege. It really represented a kind of a revival of mercantilism. Some 150, 200 years after mercantilism sort of died as an intellectual theory, and it's been it's impossible to calculate the costs of intellectual property on development. I mean, patents have been gigantically costly in an industrial sense, because what you're doing is essentially slowing down development. You're saying, okay, well, that's a cool idea, that's a cool invention, so you get to be the only producer of that for a certain extended period of time, during which time nobody else can improve your device or improve on your technology, and that just slows down development. I mean, it's really like putting a brake on progress. The copyrights are a little different. What they do is they're publishing monopolies. They don't really help authors really at all, but they grant publishing institutions a sort of monopoly privilege to be the sole producer of a particular work, whether it's music or text or painting or anything else. Now, these laws existed for a very long time, and mostly classical liberals and libertarians were against them, but didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to them. But it becomes a big deal when you have an internet. Suddenly, that is nothing but a gigantic copying machine. I mean, that's what the internet is. It's no more or less complicated than that. If you're going to describe the internet, what is it? Well, it's a big copying machine. And so if you're going to ban copies, you're essentially going to ban the internet. And that has been a great source of economic progress, practically the only source of economic progress over the last 20 years. So you kind of get this terrible clash, so something has to give, either the idea of intellectual property, or we're going to have to shut down the digital age itself. Now, in the area of copyright, there are sort of workarounds. You can publish into the Creative Commons, which I very much believe in. In fact, I think that Laissez-Faire Books may be the only fully commercial publisher of books that uses Creative Commons as its model of publishing. So we're kind of proud of that. Patents are a little trickier because when you come up with an innovation, you're almost have to be in a position you have to get a patent, or else you risk that somebody else will patent that, the thing that you innovated, and then take away your rights to be the producer of it at all. So many of the patents that are taken out today are taken out for purely defensive reasons. You have the aggressive patents, but then you also have defensive patents. They're a real problem, and nobody in the industry today likes them, by the way. It's certainly not in the software industry. So
it's interesting you said that. I kind of thought about like Socrates or Aristotle, stuff that they wrote long time ago, and then I see people repeat some of the things they say, and it's like, where do you have these ideas? Would they not continue if we had patent laws hundreds and thousands of years ago or whatever?
Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, the thing is that patents and copyrights don't actually cause anybody to become creative. And the reason for that is that they are actually not a cause of anybody's profitability. The way they usually work is, first of all, in the world of patents, I mean, 99.9% of patents never go to production. I mean, people get these patents and they hang them on the wall as a treasure to show dinner party guests. I own the patent. Oh, well, that's impressive. But did you do anything with it? No, not really. It didn't really work out. Oh, okay. Yeah. But so what actually happens is that once a market success is already achieved, then the patent holder, gets aggressive and just starts, instead of innovating, starts to sort of kick around his competitors and beat them up a little bit. I mean, this is what happened with, Eli Whitney and his idiotic cotton gin slight improvement that he made. He got the patent on the cotton gin and went around trying to kill everybody who had been ginning cotton, even if they'd never even heard of his stupid contraption. It was really, and he spent like 20 years suing everybody and he went bankrupt doing it. And then he finally decided that it was a pointless thing and got into the gun industry, and this time decided to pursue his business without patents. So it was very wise decision on his part. But that's how patents actually work. I mean, look at the way Apple, to me, it's the classic case, Apple suing Samsung, for their phone. And it was a crazy case because everybody immediately recognized that this would harm development. If you can't actually learn from other companies and compete with them, then you shut down capitalism, basically. I mean, that's a major feature of capitalism, is the ability to observe and emulate and improve. That's the whole point. It's funny, there's lots of areas. Oh, in any case, I would just finish that iPhone story. So iPhone went after Samsung with, $1 billion lawsuit, whatever, some stupid jury, went along with it. And then, it's like a couple of months later, suddenly the iPad Mini, is all over the place. And if you look at the iPad Mini, it's like a direct ripoff of Samsung's mini tablets that it came out with about 12 months ago. This is just sort of, companies trying to beat each other up using the law rather than competing fairly in a market. And industries where intellectual property does not apply, you see vibrancy and, open emulation or open stealing. I don't really want to call it stealing because, ideas can be infinitely reproduced, unlike real property. So, and places in sectors like fashion, there's no copyright or patents, and everything's dynamic and everybody makes money and everything's changing all the time. It's really exciting and fun. It's the same thing with the food industry. There's a McDonald's in my neighborhood that came out with the Fish McBites, about not even long ago. It was like 6 weeks ago. Fish McBites. Wonderful, by the way. I highly recommend it. They're really delicious. So, and they're like flaky fish. It's just like a miracle. I mean, how much innovation had to go into making those things? I don't know, but it took them a long time, a lot of investment, a lot of work, a lot of thinking, marketing, huge investment. And so there's another little fast food place about a block away in town called Checkers. So Checkers doesn't go through any of the trouble of figuring out, the marketing angle. It's put none of the investment in or anything else. It sees that there's some hubbub in town about McDonald's Fish McBites. So it puts up a sign, Fish Bites, at Checkers, $1. I went and got some. I thought they were pretty good too. I mean, open robbery, sheer stealing. I mean, just outrageous, brazen copying. And you think about it. And if you were going to, maybe be a rationalist and say, well, that system can't possibly work, where we have people openly robbing each other's fast food ideas, well, it does work. I mean, people who prefer the Checkers go to Checkers. People who like McDonald's go to McDonald's, and everybody wins. And look, society progresses. That's what you want. Food gets ever better. The customer is ever better served. It's just a system called capitalism. There's nothing wrong with it. I think it's perfectly defensible, and it certainly doesn't need intellectual property to work well.
Absolutely. So utilizing the time that we have with you, I want to shift gears a little bit. Hopefully it's not too abrasive, but talking about Bitcoin. When you're talking about internet, recently read one of your articles talking about how the internet, like you were saying, copying and the shareability, but Bitcoin is a little bit different, and so some of these fears of using a virtual currency are kind of alleviated with what they're doing. But would you mind kind of expounding upon that and talking to us about Bitcoin?
Yeah, so this subject is a very interesting one because I had been studying it for a couple of years, and I felt for a very long time the way I think a lot of people feel about this subject, which is essentially they're intimidated by it because they don't understand it. They have a vague sense that maybe there's something wrong here, that it's not on the up and up, or maybe it's just some sort of weird, geeky gaming, token. The people who play World of Warcraft or something. I don't, there's a funny sense that people have that, I don't know. So anyway, but it turns out that there's a lot of substance to it, and it's very important. And there's a lot of angles to it. But one of the things I don't think people really understand is that in the mid-1990s, when the digital age, sort of was officially inaugurated with the privatization of the Internet, we began to see a lot of speculation about a digital currency. But remember how we were talking earlier in the interview about how the great thing about the Internet and the digital age is copyability and reproducibility and scalability, and the fact that you only have to make something one time, you can sell it 1 billion times, right? It's the scalability, the copying aspect of the digital world that's so glorious. Well, it turns out in the monetary field, copyability is not such a good thing after all. as we've learned from watching the Federal Reserve. You don't want that at all. You have to have a sort of fixed supply, at least some kind of stability, and you also want openness. But anyway, the big thing to overcome was the problem of reproducibility. And what Bitcoin did, and it took years, there were many, many attempts to create a digital currency, and they all faltered because once people crack the code, they can make more of the coins, and they drive the value of the thing to zero. So Bitcoin's the first really, well, actually e-gold was the first to solve the problem of not allowing double use of the same currency unit. But e-gold didn't work because it was just a single corporation. Everybody had to trust that single corporation. So Bitcoin comes along, and the guy who invented it, used a false name and has since disappeared, and nobody knows who did it. But it's it's just an ingenious software structure. The guy should definitely get the Nobel Peace Prize or something. But he figured out how to make this thing absolutely scarce and fixed, and assign to every unit of the currency a particular identity. And that identity is encrypted with public and private keys, so that it doesn't say this is Jeffrey Tucker's Bitcoin. It says this is Bitcoin number such and such, and it's attached to such and such public key. And there are now 10 million Bitcoins in the world, and every one of them, and every unit of every one of them is assigned, to an infinite degree, no matter how small the unit is. It can be assigned to a particular owner. So you have property rights buried in there, and no one person manages this. What happens is all these ownership titles are constantly logged on what's called a ledger. And the ledger is public information. So every time you go in, and like in the early days of Bitcoin, you had to download the whole ledger in order to make a trade, and that was logged in the ledger, and then every other user of Bitcoin saw it. Nowadays, there's apps and wallets and things, so you don't have to do that anymore. But the point is that it's completely open and self-managing in that way, and utterly strict in terms of its assignment of property titles. And that's what made it brilliant. But there's other features, too, that are really so clever you can't believe it. One in particular is the way Bitcoins are created. They are mined. That's a metaphor, of course, but the way the programmers set it up is that the first coins to be made were just like what it was in the California gold rush. Like you could just show up in California with a pan and stick it in the water and kind of shake it around, and then it would be gold, right? And so the first gold was easy to get. But then as all the easy stuff was already picked over, then you had to start digging around the mountains. And then, it gets increasingly difficult to mine the more people are involved in the process, right? It's just as with gold. So it's exactly the same way with Bitcoin. The way you mine a Bitcoin is by having your server solve complicated math problems, but these problems get increasingly difficult the more Bitcoins are mined. So like 2 years ago, it was relatively easy to mine Bitcoins. In fact, the programmer actually built in rewards for mining Bitcoins. But after the easy pickings were done, then they became more difficult. And now it's rather difficult. I know a really high-level programmer who set up a mining program. He's got his whole apartment filled with servers at this point mining Bitcoins, and he earns about minimum wage, which is really a lot of money to make from mining Bitcoins, because nowadays it's really difficult, and it's going to get increasingly difficult. So half of all the Bitcoins that can ever be mined have already been mined. So we have about 10 million more that can be mined, but each unit of mining, it gets more difficult than the previous unit, just like gold. And in the same sense, there's a fixed amount of gold in the world, there's a fixed amount of Bitcoin in the world. We'll probably finish mining these Bitcoins in about, some people estimate it'll be about 100 years.
Oh, wow.
So have I blown your mind enough already?
It's already blown, yeah.
I have my bit minter running right now, actually, on my computer, and my approximate mint speed is about 7,000ths of a Bitcoin per day if I keep this application running all day.
That's so cool that you're doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of almost free money with some qualifiers.
Yeah, a little. But that's fun, though. I didn't realize you were involved in that. It's wonderful. I tell you, it's really fun about Bitcoin is that I thought about it only abstractly for the longest time until I became an owner. Actually, I sold some bow ties for Bitcoin. And then I got really excited about it. And then I've been trading Bitcoin, like calling up friends on Skype, and you can hold up your QR code. And if you've ever bought anything with Bitcoin, it's easier than one click. I mean, can you imagine a cash transmission system that I can send, 10 Bitcoin to Beijing just by pulling out my smartphone and pressing one button. Forget having to fill out big forms and go to the bank or even log into PayPal or, all the rest of the nonsense. And the fees are just almost zero. So you can see that there is a real future to this thing. And there's a reason why when Cyprus trouble came along, people were bailing out of the euro and jumping into Bitcoin. There's a reason why the latest price I saw this morning was $90, I think. So there's a real future here, and it's very exciting. And if you have doubts, the best way to alleviate them is just to jump in and get some Bitcoin and start using them. And then you'll see, oh my goodness, the government money systems don't stand a chance over the long term.
It's interesting listening to you talk about this. It is exciting. I share in that excitement. And it's one thing I kind of relate it to is golf. There's always the analogy of just a little adjustments. If you're one angle this way or just a couple millimeters another way, that changes the whole trajectory of the ball. And I think that's very true to life when we're talking about things that we could do to increase our independence, financially or otherwise. Just make a little adjustment, and that, being a part of Bitcoin isn't a huge task, from my understanding.
That's right.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, it was funny in that I just have to quickly tell the story because it's so interesting. And then there's another interview that's waiting for me, so I need to grab it. But there was a college student who said that, look, I need a summer job, and I said, why don't you just trade Bitcoin? You can charge 40% premiums for trading cash for Bitcoin at the local level. Register at localbitcoin.com, and you can make a lot of money doing it that way. And she said to me, I'm just not so sure. I think that I have some doubts about meeting in late-night cafes, exchanging cash for Bitcoin with people involved in sketchy activities. I think I'd rather just work in a coffee shop. Which made me laugh.
Hey, Jeffrey, how much time do we have left with you?
I only have about a minute. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem. I want to just get your thoughts on this real quick. It's a quote that that you said in one of your speeches, but you said, don't seek to do the big things, but seek to do good things in small ways and let those accumulate as the years go on. And anyways, I'll talk about my perspective off air. I just wanted to, say that really hit home with me, but could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't know where I said that or when, but that's certainly the way I've conducted my work for liberty. You just find the one thing you can do in the course of the day and be happy with it. And when you look back over the years and you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, I've done a lot of wonderful things. And I think it's the best way to avoid demoralization. I really worry about despair within the libertarian world. And I don't understand. To me, to discover the ideas of liberty is to discover a bright and brilliant and beautiful light. It's a kind of a guidepost. It's a sort of a path that you walk on. And the idea that, libertarians would find themselves in a state of despair because the government is big or the police state that keeps advancing, a war can't be stopped, whatever, is really depressing to me, because we have so much work we can do in our own lives to make our own lives freer, to make the lives of our loved ones freer, to build networks, to empower ourselves to become heroes, to do brilliant things for ourselves and for future generations. Opportunities have never been more vast than they are right now for us in our times. We're very blessed to be alive.
Jeffrey Tucker, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. The website, the address is lfb.org. Again, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate your having me on, and I look forward to doing it again if possible. All the best to you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Hey, Brock and Erica, I just want to talk to you real quick. That quote, just something that he gave in a speech at the Mises Institute. But it's interesting to me when I reflect on it and how it speaks to me is, it kind of speaks to relating it to growing individuals, which is ultimately how we will change the collective. And, hopefully through that, even changing the world's view or perspective of human interaction. And, maybe even to the point where there's no longer a viewpoint of a collective. But, what do you guys think about that? Let's start with Erica.
Well, I think that this is sort of bringing us full circle here to what we started with, which is the slow movement of the liberty movement and how progress can happen in small ways or in large ways, and how Jeff was saying that he sees it really happening in small ways, and that's okay. And they'll accumulate as the years go on.
Absolutely. Brock?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think that was the biggest thing for me, just in life in general, not just liberty, but just like I'd always think like I have to have it now. It has to be completed now, and it's the analogy that I try to use all the time. The goal isn't to build a wall. The goal is to lay a brick as perfectly as we can lay it, and eventually we'll have a wall. If you start throwing up bricks and just as fast as you can, eventually the wall's going to collapse. It's not going to build on a solid foundation. So I think it's a huge thing, and I think a lot of libertarians are starting to wake up to this, and just people in general are starting to realize that I'll make one little change, and all of a sudden in 6 months it's going to start to filter into other areas of my life.
Right, absolutely. What those one little changes, like the golf analogy or any other analogy, those the small changes are really what make an impact. It's interesting to think that, I'm sure a lot of us have heard, are doing math, if you, from the starting point, if you're 1 degree off, 100 miles down the road, you're 100 miles off course. And so I just find it very interesting that, people, I want to make this grand change in my life. I want to do this big thing, when really all it takes is just a little adjustment, because we all have, a fairly good understanding, I think, of what we need or want in our life. And those small adjustments down the road make big impacts. But I want to just thank Erica for coming on. Erica Davies, so go ahead and give your chapter and where you head that up at.
Okay, well, I'm I'm a co-president. There are two of us. We are in charge of the Duquesne Young Americans for Liberty chapter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We just applied to become Students for Liberty campus coordinators, so we could pretty soon have 2 potential Liberty groups working on campus. Pittsburgh has actually become a hub for the Liberty movement, what with all the universities there. And it's really, really great to be working in an area with so many like-minded people. But it's also great to go out into the world and see what the rest of the world thinks.
Absolutely. Well, great. We wish you best of luck, and hope to have you back on the show very, very soon. So thank you for your time coming on and your great input and questions and everything.
Yes, thanks so much, guys.
Absolutely.
It was good to talk to you again.
Thanks, Erica.
And Brock, any final comments from you?
I just personally, I need to do more research on Bitcoin. Sounds really exciting. I heard of it a few years ago, and I kind of dismissed it and just thought it was a little kooky to begin with. But it's only because I didn't research it. So it's kind of exciting hearing more and more. Just need to do a little more research in terms of what are the controls to keep it from turning into them being able to make Bitcoin for themselves or their friends, kind of like the Fed does. Just trying to find out. And maybe Jeffrey Tucker explained that a bit, but I needed to research a little bit more of that.
Absolutely. I think I share in that skepticism, but nothing that can't either be affirmed or alleviated through some good old research.
Exactly.
But no, it is interesting. I do want to point out, anyone that's listening, unleashindependence.com, that's the website. Unleash Independence Radio is what you're listening to. We do not accept donations or anything like that, but we do appreciate you sharing our content, joining our Facebook and all the other social media connections. But, yeah, I don't know. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's good. I just want to thank
So
Jeffrey Tucker again for coming on. I think it was really good to get information. I appreciate the way he explains things. I think the biggest thing I learning from Jeffrey Tucker is he explains things in such a way, it's more of a poetic type way. It's not a I know more than you. He's actually trying to paint a picture when he speaks about liberty or about anything. So it was really enlightening.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, both of you, Erica, Brock, and thank you, Jeffrey, for your time spending on Unleash Independence Radio. And keep in mind in your daily trajectory, your daily walk, that you own your life and no other individual does. Thank you.
You are seeking a healthier, safer, or simply a happier life. Independence is the foundation. This doesn't mean you are alone. With our online community, you are able to exchange information with people who share your same desire and respect for self-reliance. Thank you for being a part of Unleashing Independence, the place where complaints are curbed and solutions are obtained. You can control your life rather than have life control you. UnleashIndependence.com. UnleashIndependence.com.